After his father loses his family jewels in an accident he caused, a young man seeks love in a town that's against him. He becomes interested in a sheltered blind woman who insists on losing her innocence. John was a neglected child since his father, Big Daddy, who owned a power plant, was busy turning the town into a city by installing the first traffic light. During the inaugural, he prepared to drive as soon as the green light flashed, with a liquor bottle in his pants. As the light turned green, the smiling town grocer, Helga, stepped into the crossing, causing Big Daddy to swerve and crash. Vivi found the broken bottle between his legs, severing his beloved appendage. Sometime before the inaugural, John had switched the standing red man with a cutout of a walking man because he felt sorry only the green man could walk. This led Helga to think he could cross the street. Due to the injury, Big Daddy gave up his dreams, closed the plant, and now works as a radio station host at home. His veterinarian wife secretly turns to alcohol, and John stays at home. Since the plant closed, the town became stagnant. The train is now replaced by a bus driven by the former train driver. The town still blames John for this, banning him from riding the bus. While helping his mom with a horse, John smiles as he watches Edith, Helga's blind daughter, get off the bus. Later, John visits the convenience store where Edith works, and when he places booze on the counter, Edith adds some candies. John wonders how she knows it's him, and Edith says she can smell him. He then goes to his secret hideout in his father's abandoned plant, where his young friend, Ben, asks if he loves Edith. John denies this as he cuts out a building from a magazine, reasoning that Edith thinks he smells. They sometimes peek into people's houses, and John reads their lips, making up funny conversations. The whole town believes John only causes trouble, so Ben feels obligated to be his friend. One rainy afternoon, John makes a beat by hitting a scrap car door with a shovel. Elsewhere, Edith hears this along with the rain and plays a melody on the piano. Her father arrives and smiles, learning she made it up by listening to sounds around her. Later, while John helps in his father's radio station, Vivi brings food and scratches her husband's back, then kisses his neck, earning confused reactions. That day, John waits inside his father's old crashed car until Edith returns home from school. He preens himself and goes inside the store but doesn't find her at the counter. He hides as she and her father emerge from the back room. John listens as Edith talks about going to a party and sleeping over at someone's house, determined to gain experience. Helga, fiddling with the knife, doesn't answer directly. Edith reasons she wants to fit in. John spots her father precariously placing the knife near the cash register. Helga asks his daughter to open the counter and get some change, positioning his foot beneath the knife. As soon as Edith opens the counter, the knife falls and stabs Helga's foot. He goes to Vivi to check the wound, agonizing that she now has to stay home and care for him. Finding the situation awkward, John sneaks to the door, but Edith asks if he can come over tonight. Bewildered, he asks if she's serious, and she repeats it, adding not to let her father see him and to take a shower. That evening, Ben asks if he can go with John to Edith's place, but John refuses. Soon, John finds himself in Edith's room, covering his eyes as she changes into alluring clothes. When she steps out, she asks his opinion, and he praises her. She takes a swig of alcohol and puts on a dress, asking if she looks old-fashioned or easy, but John can't tell. Edith then sits beside him with a box of makeup, asking for his help to make her pretty. John does what he can with the makeup and helps her sneak out of her house. Near the bus stop, she thanks him and tells him to go home. Confused, John runs off. Eventually, Edith reaches her classmates hanging out by the bus stop. They tease her for being dolled up and try to pair her with their dorkier classmate. Edith ignores this and takes a seat, asking for a cigarette and drink. She tries to fit in, but they start pushing her around, ripping her dress in the process. John watches the pitiful scene unfold from afar as Edith walks away, ashamed and hurt. He then heads home, and his father calls him from the bathroom, asking if he's been hanging out around the bus stop. He denies this, but his father trusts him not to be around those teenagers, reminding John that he loves him. The next day, John calls Ben through the radio, but the kid is busy with homework, so John decides to visit the store. He sees Edith at the counter and the injured Helga greets him, commenting that he's training his daughter to be a full-time store owner. John then checks on Edith, but she stands up and quietly asks him to sleep with her. He clarifies if she meant being his girlfriend, but she only wants the deed. The next day, John and Ben talk about John's arrangement with Edith. Ben reminds John that when they ogled twins Kitty and Mitty in their home, he experienced pain from the excitement because the skin doesn't stretch. Big Daddy doesn't mind his condition, since it keeps John from having improper thoughts. Ben just advises John to call it off with Edith. With that, John finds Edith and sees her on the railways. He asks what she's doing, and she shares that she's waiting for the train to Paris, dreaming of traveling around the world. She then asks if he's backing out. He isn't and tries to kiss her cheek, but Edith moves away. Nearby, Vivi witnesses this. John then recalls the first time they spoke. It was when he and Edith picked up oranges that fell off a truck and planned to make a juice stand for them. Edith doesn't recall it and instead asks if he already has experience regarding their arrangement. Since he doesn't, she proposes they practice by watching a video. With that, John later asks his mom if it's possible to do it with Edith given his condition. Vivi states that it's impossible, and the only solution is if they sneak into the city without Big Daddy knowing. John frowns, concluding that it's impossible. Later, while the family has dinner inside the radio studio, Vivi suddenly brings up John's condition. She suggests taking him to the city hospital to treat it, but Big Daddy is against it. The two talk inside the crashed car that evening. There, Big Daddy talks about how he took life and women for granted. However, when he decided to close the plant after the crash, everyone blamed John for it while he defended him from them. With that, Big Daddy reasons that chasing girls brings trouble, and bringing trouble means John doesn't care about him and his efforts. Feeling guilty, the son nods in understanding. On another evening, Big Daddy reports to the radio how the townsfolk have caught a deformed boar that's responsible for the discolored and deformed piglets around town. Vivi is tasked to deal with it, but instead of taking its life, they'll neuter it. John helps his mother with the operation, and she cups the removed organs after, saying his father wants them. After the operation, John washes his hands, only for his mother to inject him with anesthetics, saying she'll try to fix him. He protests since she's been drinking, but he soon loses consciousness. The next morning, John bolts awake and inspects himself. He later tells Ben about it through the radio, along with how distracted his father is with Junior, their new pet pig. Ben asks if he'll do it with Edith now, and John answers that he'll do it not just for the deed, but to help her. That afternoon, while John cleans waste, Big Daddy throws a frisbee, hitting his head and toppling him onto the dung. His father urges him to throw it back, but he flings too hard, causing it to land in Edith's yard. He goes to retrieve it, but Edith, who's hanging clothes, spots him and tells him to watch the movie with her since Helga isn't home. The woman walks inside, but since John's overalls are ruined, he removes them before heading in. Soon, John finds himself pantsless beside Edith while describing what's happening in the movie. Eventually, Edith stops it, finding the content distasteful, though she wonders if she's overthinking it. Her hand lands on his lap. Noticing that he's not wearing pants, she starts talking about her first kiss while her fingers drift up his thigh. To his horror, he bleeds as he gets excited, prompting him to leave. As his mother cleans the blood, she reminds him not to get excited until the wound fully heals. Ben finds opportunities to tease John about this, such as going back to watch the twins. However, he goes away, and eventually, John gets too focused on doing it with Edith that he forgets to hang out with Ben. As the days pass, his wound heals fully, and John tells Ben through the radio that he's ready. Soon, John finds himself in Edith's room. The woman turns the radio on to hear Big Daddy's updates so they can tell where their parents are. Edith proactively opens her shirt and lays down on the bed. John moves in for a kiss, but she questions it because she's not starting a relationship. With that, she asks him to unclothe and spurs him to get it done. The nervous man hesitates, so she removes her clothes, only for him to cover her up, excusing that he's confused. With the momentum ruined, Edith forces him to leave. Distraught, John spends a sleepless night but tries to get through the next day. He taps the car door to a beat, hoping Edith will hear it. The woman instead turns a music box on, choosing to hear it over the outside world. John shares what happened to Ben over the radio, and Ben replies to just forget about that woman. One evening, Helga goes home to find Edith brooding by the piano. She plays a delightful tune to describe a pretty woman, then plays discord to describe herself in contrast. Her father awkwardly chuckles at this and leaves. Later, John taps the tune on the window next to Edith. The woman slams her hand on the window, but John takes this chance to align his hands with hers, appreciating the little sentiment about it. Big Daddy, however, sees this. He takes John inside the crashed car and laments how he's playing with the blind girl's feelings. John denies this and explains that he feels that everything he does is wrong, but he feels right with Edith. His father concludes that John has fallen in love and scolds him, saying his condition means he can never have that. This pushes Big Daddy to destroy the bus stop shack the next day and announce over the radio that he'll lead them to clean up this town, reclaiming control over their lives. One afternoon, John chances upon Kitty, who's carrying 2 heavy bags. They make eye contact, and Kitty gestures for him to help her, so he does. She later welcomes him into their home, and Mitty serves them coffee. The twins join him on the couch and comment that a fresh flower like him shouldn't be withering. They still see light in his eyes, but it will be snuffed soon. The tense man asks what should be done, and the two advise him to enjoy life before it's too late. This encourages him, so he thanks them before running off to the hideout. There, he tells Ben to leave. The youngster figures out that he's bringing Edith here and protests since this is their place. John reasons that he's not a kid anymore, so he can't only play with him. Betrayed, Ben marches off. Later, John visits Edith, but the woman keeps ignoring him. After a while, a customer taps Edith, asking what John is doing. She gets up to investigate and feels that the man has stacked up their new inventory in the shape of the Eiffel Tower. He then leads her to another tower, and she feels that it's shaped like the Empire State Building, making her smile. Delighted, she joins him to his hideout where he lets her feel the myriad of cutouts he pasted on the window. She comments that he likes tall buildings, so he says that with this, she can pretend she's traveling the world. Outside, Ben wanders about, trying to contact John through the radio. He passes by his friend's home and sees Big Daddy, who checks his wife's trailer, finding her drinking. Furthering his dismay is when he finds a jar with John's extra skin that she removed. In the hideout, John lights candles to set the mood. Edith admits she felt awkward last time, prompting John to confess he wanted to be with her to ease her worries. They agree to be friends first, but as they hold hands, Edith decides to kiss his cheek. John then kisses her back, igniting their passion. They commit to their arrangement. In the morning, John wakes up to find Helge, Big Daddy, Ben, and a worker, making him scream. Big Daddy glares at them with disappointment before tearing down the cutouts his son placed on the walls and windows. John tries to stop him, but when his father faces him, he bows his head. They leave wordlessly, leaving Edith confused. The worker begins scraping off the cutouts while Big Daddy leads John home. There, John sees the trailer burned down. In the radio studio, Vivi wallows in guilt on the couch. Big Daddy blames them for keeping secrets and announces on the radio that he feels sad, telling his neighbors to clean up the town again. In the grocery store, Edith begs her father to talk to her, asking for appreciation or even scolding her for going behind his back. Helga smiles and says he's happy as long as he has her in the store. She grabs his hand, begging for any normal reaction, but he refuses and shows her their new cookie products. This makes Edith leave to go to John. To make her stay, Helga pushes the tower John made and asks his daughter to help him clean it up, claiming it was an accident. Despite knowing he did it on purpose, Edith helps him. At the bus stop, the teens are surprised to see the shed demolished. They blame Big Daddy and turn up the bus radio to hear what he's saying. In the radio studio, Big Daddy forces his son to ask for forgiveness, claiming he took advantage of Edith and forced his mother to operate on him. John denies this, even when his father insists it's his fault. John stands his ground and says he has nothing to apologize for. Big Daddy takes the mic and motions for Vivi to approach, saying the town is in an abyss because of them. He points at Junior, who is now happy because they cut his problems away. Vivi then pulls out a syringe and a sedative. Listening to this, an old man at the bus stop asks what's happening, so the teens say John will be castrated. Back in the studio, John steps back, but his father stands up to hug him, saying he's doing this out of love. John rejects him, saying nobody treats their loved ones like this. To their surprise, Vivi injects the sedative into her husband instead. The man screams as his body fails him. Vivi then glances out the window and sees Edith approaching the bus stop, so she tells her son to leave. John rushes outside where Ben is waiting. The kid apologizes for telling on him, not knowing it would escalate like this. John forgives him, so Ben acknowledges that he's not a kid anymore but hands him the radio, promising that they're still friends. John reaches the bus stop, and the teens make way for him. The driver also allows him inside before driving off. Inside, he finds Edith and sits beside her. The woman lets her hand drift to his, and they hold hands, supporting each other as they finally embark on a journey without their father's constraints.